Episode 3. The War of All Wars, the Titanomachy. Previously on the Eternal Pantheon. In the beginning, there was only chaos. No sky, no sea, no earth as we know it, just a vast, formless void where the raw ingredients of the universe existed without meaning. And from within that ancient disorder, something began to stir. Her name was Gaia, the earth herself, and from her came Pontus, the primordial sea, Aurea, the mountains, and most significant of all, Uranus, the sky. Together, Gaia and Uranus filled the world with monstrous, magnificent children, the 100-armed Hecatoncheires who could hurl mountains like stones, the single-eyed Cyclopes, master craftsmen, and then 12 mighty titans, powerful, intelligent, ambitious. Watching them grow, Uranus felt something he had never felt before: fear. So he seized his children one by one and cast them into Tartarus, a prison buried deep inside their own mother's body. Gaia felt every blow, every cry of pain, and she endured it for as long as she could. Then she stopped enduring. She forged a sickle, sharp enough to cut through divine flesh, and asked her children to rise against their father. Most refused out of fear. Only one took the blade. Cronus, the youngest, the most cunning, the most ambitious. On a still night, he struck his father down and claimed the throne of the universe for himself. But Uranus, dying, left him a warning that would define the rest of his reign. Voice deepens. Just as you have overthrown me, so too shall one of your own sons overthrow you. That warning consumed Cronus completely. So when his wife Rhea began bearing his children, he was waiting for each one: Hestia, Demeter, Hera, Hades, Poseidon. One by one he swallowed them whole, trapping them alive inside him, an echo of the very prison his own father had once used against him. Rhea endured it 5 times, but when her 6th child was coming, she made a choice. She traveled to the island of Crete, gave birth in secret, and hid the boy away, leaving Cronus a stone wrapped in cloth instead. He swallowed it without a second glance. In hiding, the boy grew, strong, patient, watching the world through the eyes of a sacred eagle, learning everything he would need to know. His name was Zeus. And when he was finally ready, he returned to his father in disguise and gave him a potion that forced him to disgorge everything he had swallowed. Out came Hestia, Demeter, Hera, Hades, Poseidon, free, fully grown, and burning with fury 5 lifetimes in the making. Cronus had spent his entire reign trying to outrun a prophecy, and in that single moment, it had already come true. The children of Cronus were free. But freedom was not peace. Mount Olympus now had its rebels. Mount Othrys still had its king. And between them, a war was coming that would shake the universe to its foundations. This is Episode 3, The War of All Wars, the Titanomachy. Narrator tone. When Zeus freed his brothers and sisters from the stomach of Cronus, it did not simply end one chapter and begin another. It ignited a war. The Titans had reigned for ages uncounted. They were ancient, experienced, and deeply powerful. Cronus still sat on his throne on Mount Othrys. And when word reached him of what had happened, that his children were free, that his youngest son had orchestrated the whole thing, he did not panic. He called his allies. The Titans assembled in full force, giants of cosmic power, beings who had existed longer than almost anything else in the universe. They rallied to Cronus's banner, ready to crush this rebellion before it could amount to anything serious. But Zeus and his siblings had already claimed their ground. They ascended Mount Olympus, the tallest mountain in Greece, its peak perpetually wreathed in cloud. It was there that the rebel gods established their headquarters, their fortress, their home. This conflict would become known as the Titanomachy, the War of the Titans, and it would last for 10 years. The battlefield was the plains of Thessaly. On one side, the Titans, led in the field by Atlas, one of the mightiest among them. On the other, Zeus and his siblings, younger, fewer in number, still finding their footing as gods. In the early stages, the Titans imposed themselves. Their sheer physical power was overwhelming. For years, the balance seemed to tip decisively toward the Titans. Zeus recognized that to win this war, he needed more. He turned his attention to Tartarus. Down in that deep prison, the Cyclopes had been kept captive since the days of Uranus. Zeus descended and offered them freedom. The Cyclopes accepted. And in gratitude, they did what they did best. They built. Working with divine materials, they created 3 weapons of extraordinary power, gifts for the 3 brothers who led the rebellion. For Zeus, the lightning bolt, not simply a weapon, but a force of nature made portable. A concentrated thunderstrike that he could summon and hurl with devastating effect. The bolt that would become his eternal symbol. For Poseidon, the Trident, a 3-pronged weapon capable of striking the earth and sea with equal force, generating earthquakes that could shatter coastlines and tsunamis that could swallow entire islands. For Hades, the Helm of Darkness, a helmet that granted its wearer complete invisibility, the ability to move through the world unseen and undetected. In the right hands, a weapon more powerful than either of the others. Armed with these gifts, the Olympians returned to the fight, and the war shifted. But even this was not enough to bring the Titans to their knees. So Zeus returned to Tartarus a second time, and this time he freed the Hecatoncheires, the 100 armed creatures that Uranus himself had feared, that Cronus had refused to release precisely because he knew how dangerous they were. When the Hecatoncheires appeared on the battlefield, the effect was immediate. The Titan army looked at these creatures, each one swinging 100 arms simultaneously, each arm capable of hurling a boulder the size of a house, and something that had never happened before occurred. The Titans panicked. What followed was a rout. The Hecatoncheires tore through the Titan ranks, their combined assault generating a chaos that no military formation could withstand. And through this mayhem, Zeus himself rose above the battlefield and gathered every ounce of divine power he possessed into a single ultimate strike. He flung the most powerful lightning bolt ever created at Cronus. The impact shook the universe. The earth trembled, the seas churned, the sky itself seemed to fracture for a moment. And when the light faded, the Titans were finished. One by one, they were subdued, bound, and cast down into Tartarus, the same prison they had once escaped from. Cronus himself was condemned to its depths. The Hecatoncheires, now freed and loyal to Zeus, took on the role of eternal jailers. For the general of the Titan army, the mighty Atlas, Zeus reserved a special punishment. Rather than imprisonment, Atlas was condemned to stand at the edge of the world and bear the entire weight of the celestial sphere on his shoulders for eternity, never resting, never setting it down. The 3 brothers drew lots to divide the universe. Zeus took the sky and supreme authority over all gods and mortals. Poseidon claimed the seas. Hades received dominion over the underworld. Together, on the peak of Olympus, they built the great home of the gods. The age of the Titans was over. The age of the Olympians had begun. But power is not the same as peace. The new gods were not simply going to exist in harmony. In the next episode, we pull our gaze down from the divine wars and look at something more intimate, the creation of humanity itself and the extraordinary act of defiance that gave us fire.